Hi, welcome to The Sacred Journey. The Sacred Journey is the program that reminds you that life is a wonderful adventure, and each and every experience we have is a unique and perfect opportunity for learning. I'm Joyce St, Germaine, and tonight's program is going to have a lot of wow moments. I never thought of that. I didn't realize that. I'm glad I now have been made aware of that, and it's better bone density without drugs. And I'm so thrilled to have naturopathic physician Dr. Michelle Pulio. Welcome to our show.
Thanks, Joyce.
Now, you've been in private practice for 25 years, and you're currently in New Hartford.
Right.
And you and I met in yoga class, and I have to bring that up because that's going to play a big part in what we're doing tonight.
Yes, absolutely. We'll talk about yoga for osteoporosis.
Okay, well, I want to go all the way back to the beginning, talking about bone density. Some people don't even really have a clear understanding. Is it a women's issue? Is it a men's issue? Is it a thing for just people who live in the United States or people of a certain age? Give us a little bit of a background.
Yes, well, osteoporosis is a condition where we're losing bone mineral density and architectural structure to the inside of the bone. And it's a natural process. Women lose more bone density than men because men are more naturally dense. And we knew that.
We won't even touch that
we won't
comment.
touch that. But women tend to lose bone density more quickly after menopause. By 2020, 50% of American women will be 50 years old and older. So this is a population that's really coming to the attention of the medical community. So I frequently see women patients who have been told they need a bone density test, a DEXA test, DXA. It's a very low radiation. You can do it clothed, and it looks at the bone density of the lower lumbar vertebrae and where the hip bones are met by the leg bone, the femoral head and the femoral necks. And then they're given a number, and based on that number, a recommendation is made to them if they have osteopenia or osteoporosis, if they should be taking a pharmaceutical prescription. And then often those women come to see me and say, do I have an option here?
Do you start with, if you have the option and the opportunity, a baseline of before there is an issue, like when maybe in the younger years?
No, they don't actually recommend that someone do a baseline. And that's a really good question, because occasionally I'll see a woman in her 50s, early to mid 50s. She's had one bone density test. The numbers are, in the professional opinion, low, and that she should consider taking Fosamax. And my point is, look, this is your first bone density test. This may have been your bone density all along.
And that's a manufactured drug, right?
Yeah, and that's a manufactured drug. Although
Okay.
Sally Field says, take care of your bones with Fosamax. I'm like, oh, we're being betrayed by the flying nun.
To say that, doesn't she?
I know.
Okay.
So
there are other options, and I know there are two professional organizations. You and I have had a few opportunities to chat that have varying beliefs about the testing.
Yes, it's very interesting. So in the U.S., when someone has a DEXA, there's a report, and it's interpreted, and it will say, according to the recommendations of the NOF, which is the National Osteoporosis Foundation of the U.S., based on their recommendations, this person should do blah, blah. And if I take that information and feed it into an algorithm that's put out by the World Health Organization, it's called a FRAX test. Anybody can do that. Anybody can go to the computer and take their numbers and feed it into FRAX. Maybe sometime I'll come and I'll do that for you guys and see what it looks like. It gives an indication whether actually that woman is at risk for fracture for the next 10 years. And the difference between those two interpretations and the groups is that the World Health Organization, which is based on many nations' numbers and statistics, is that it's not just our age and our bone density and our weight that affects whether we are in fact at risk for fracture, but whether we drink alcohol, whether we smoke, whether we're taking a steroid, do you have rheumatoid arthritis, and if you have had a parent with a fracture, and your ethnicity.
Really?
So that makes a difference.
So do you have one organization that you favor the results of?
I favor the results from the World Health Organization. I'll see this 54-year-old woman. She's had 2 bone density tests, and her bone density has gone down a little bit. She has osteopenia. She's being told she needs to take a drug, and she doesn't have any other risk factors. This is an active, healthy woman. Parents never had an osteoporotic fracture. So based on that, and I feed that into the FRAX algorithm, this says there's no way she's at risk for fracture for the next 10 years. I can say to her, all right, let's look at your bone density in relationship to your vitamin D levels. Let's see what your B12 and folic acid is. Do you have high homocysteine, which is another risk factor that these other
What does that mean?
Homocysteine? It's a long story, but it's if someone has a high homocysteine in their blood, it may mean that they actually have a genetic mutation that doesn't allow them to break down homocysteine, and that could be affecting their collagen.
But I have no idea what homocysteine means.
It's an amino acid.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's what I needed.
Sorry. So anyways, and then I say to her, but look, I can tell you from personal observation, 25 years of practice, the thing that's going to help you the most as far as your bone density is concerned is to start doing regular yoga.
Okay, now you're saying yoga. You're not saying exercise. I had first heard weight-bearing exercise, weight lift, and do this and do that. And I have to bring up the yoga again because that's where we met, and I am absolutely fascinated by some of the studies you talked about.
Well, I just saw recently one of my patients actually emailed me this article of the New York Times, and it was like maybe a month ago, and it's on a paper, what are women to do? Exercise doesn't make a difference. And it went on to talk about the different exercises and the weight bearing and the running, and it didn't mention yoga. So what's unique about yoga, well, I noticed in my practice, that women who were doing yoga actually were maintaining and building bone density after menopause. Now, this is unheard of in the conventional world. And I thought, well, what's going on here? I looked for research, and an MD, Dr. Lauren Fishman, he's from New York. He's, I think, at Sacred Heart Hospital in New York, who's also a yoga practitioner, started a pilot study in 2010. And in fact, with a small study, was showing that in 2 years, that 19 or so out of the 22 people who were in that study actually increased bone density without the drugs. He doesn't even look at vitamin D. He doesn't even do B12. He's just basing it. He needs to standardize his research. Okay. So anyways, he wrote a book called Yoga for Osteoporosis. And myself and my yoga teacher, Leslie.
Yep, Leslie Gordon. She's a friend of the show, a friend of mine, and been on the show many times.
We went up to Kripalu, and we did a 3-day workshop with Dr. Fishman on yoga for osteoporosis.
So you are an educator, too, because you do workshops on osteoporosis.
Yes, with Leslie. Yoga. Yes, we talk about all of this information, and then we do the poses, which thankfully, they're nothing outrageous. It's not like having to do headstands or,
It's gentle.
It's gentle. And Dr. Fishman's book, and also Leslie can do this privately with clients or my patients. You could do the whole routine in a chair.
So if you have limitations
right.
and aren't able to do what you would consider full-out yoga with the mat and the floor and the whole bit, well, I'm currently in yoga teacher training because I have that strong of a faith in yoga, not just for this, but for lots of other reasons. So let us plan that when I'm done my training, that you and I and Leslie will get together and work with our viewers, because we can demonstrate, we can share your knowledge and her experience, and I'll be the guinea pig and show, because I think it's remarkable stuff. Now, is the medical community going, whoa, we better take another look at that, or we're not watching because we're not into yoga? So what's going on now that you've got this great
I think
result?
That the medical community is limited by what their own associations, like the AMA and things like that, are telling them are the standards of care. And so if they're told that somebody has a minus 2.5, that by the National Osteoporosis Foundation of the United States, that is a diagnosis of osteoporosis, and that person should be on a prescription medication. That's their standard of care. And so if that's the case, they're liable if they don't prescribe that.
But people who do yoga, from my personal experience, from the people I know that do yoga, they want a more natural approach to life, period. Not artificial chemical approach to life. That's why they're doing yoga.
Yes, and I'm very blessed as a physician that the majority of patients I see mostly women. I like men, but I don't understand them. So I see mostly women, and the fact that they're coming to a naturopathic physician, they're already not not the standard American patient, right? They're already coming somewhat empowered, excited about creating health for themselves. It's not, sometimes another doctor will say, well, how do you get someone's triglycerides down? It's like, not me. The patient comes and says, how do I do this? And they do it.
So it's self-empowerment and self-responsibility.
Right, self-motivation. So, I have to acknowledge that I do see a different patient than maybe the conventional physician may see. I occasionally will, at a party, I'll hear someone say something like, hey, I can eat anything because I'm on Lipitor. And I just think, yikes. That's not someone who's going to say, listen, I think you really need to be on a low carbohydrate, clean protein, lots of vegetables, no alcohol diet.
Now, is that what you prescribe for osteoporosis, or for just general all over good health, or
in general overall good health? I think that we need to be eating a lot less sugar and a lot less processed food and a lot more vegetables, clean proteins, as much as possible, and for some people that will include some animal proteins. I don't think dairy is a particularly good food. I think it's a good garnish, but it really shouldn't be a mainstay. So we should talk about then foods that are high in calcium, right? So some of the most dense calcium in the non-dairy world are in nuts. And if someone can tolerate nuts, I tell people they should be eating a half a cup to a cup of nuts a day.
Any kinds?
Almonds are the highest in calcium. Next come cashews. Cashews are also very high in magnesium. A lot of the seeds are really great too, and so are Brazil nuts, which you can get your daily RDA from Brazil nuts of selenium in one nut a day.
Really?
Yes.
Now, is there any truth to what I had heard, that too many of them become toxic? If you have to, you can literally OD. I don't know if that's
Brazil
true
nuts?
Yes, I read that somewhere and I went, oh, okay.
I think you'd have to eat quite a few Brazil nuts to become selenium toxic. Mm-hmm.
But is selenium a bad thing in too high amounts?
It's a fairly, we need very low dose in micrograms.
Oh, okay. So that's why one does it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You could probably safely eat 2 or 3 Brazil nuts a day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know for the Brazil nut lovers out there.
Hey, so we were talking about earlier about ethnic differences in bone density, which was really very interesting, eh? Okay, so there was a study that looked at Caucasian Americans, Black Americans, Asian Americans, and Latin Americans. So Black Americans tend to have the most dense bones by DEXA, and Asian Americans tend to have the least dense bones by DEXA.
Okay.
So who had the highest fracture rate? Well, already.
I was surprised.
Okay, because it was?
It was not the one with the least dense bones. It was not.
It was the Caucasian Americans.
Yeah, it was
who
not
had the most fractures. So, it goes to say that the DEXA test, although it is telling us about how much bone minerals are in that bone, how much, mineral density, it's not telling us about the architecture, the structure, the internal structure, how it's bearing up to stress. So the DEXA test, in my opinion, is not the end all. It's a tool. It can be a tool that will help women and men, because as I say, men can get osteoporosis too. By the time we're in our 80s, for every 2 women who have osteoporosis, 1 man would. Okay. So DEXA can be a tool to help us really keep track that we're on track.
Now, if you start seeing a woman and she's in her 20s or 30s, do you start ahead thinking, okay, we want to help her to maintain and not lose bone density, or do you wait until there's some factors that are giving you more information?
It's very unusual, unless a young woman has been dealing with, say, eating disorders, anorexia, bulimia, that they'll lose that much bone density.
I just meant preventatively, assuming that they'll be seeing you in their 50s and 60s and 70s.
Just that we have to keep moving. And I think the earlier that women also can do yoga, the better pregnancies they'll have, the better births they'll have. So I advise everybody to start thinking about incorporating yoga into their life. Dr. Fishman's program is 10 minutes a day. 10 minutes.
Why do you think yoga is different than, you
Pilates,
said they tested Pilates and Tai Chi and running and everything else. I have a guess, but I'm not an expert, that because it literally is working internally on the organs and the meridians and things, but I don't know. Do you have an idea, or was it presented to you by Dr. Fishman?
He talked about torque. There's so much I mean, how often do we spin around in a chair like this and hold it? You know, to twist and move in ways that we don't normally do stimulates the bones in a unique way. Also, so many of the poses, even if it's just warrior and you're standing like this, you know, holding our arms and contracting the muscles in their most lengthened position is unique. I mean, that's a unique way to strengthen the muscle, and it's going to be pulling on the bone in a very unique way. And I think that's what it's about we're stimulating the bones in ways that we don't normally do.
Yeah, because other forms of exercise, if there's torque and twisting, it's not maintained. It's a pass-through between this movement and that movement.
Right.
So, yeah, that makes absolutely perfect sense.
And that's also why if someone isn't in particularly good physical fitness, that starting yoga in a chair will have the same effect for them if it's a challenge as it would be for someone who does a lot of yoga and has to do, you know, more.
Yeah. Just a couple weeks ago, Leslie was here doing chair yoga.
Oh, good.
So that's really good. Now, you and I both agreed when we were chatting that it's really good to go to someone who can guide you into the proper way to do the poses and postures. It's nice to get a DVD on it and watch it on TV, but you might not be getting the benefits of it, and you might not be getting the safety that you need without someone who's well informed and knowledgeable and trained to do it.
Yes, I strongly recommend that. I see some women in their 70s and 80s, and they've already been on the meds, and they've been told they need to come off them. Now they need a drug holiday. I love that, a drug holiday. So to come off the drug, and they want to do yoga. And I say, look, you know, have Leslie come to your place and have you watch in a mirror and see what it's supposed to look like and feel what it's supposed to feel like. You know, because when we're watching a video, first of all, I don't know about you, but I don't know what I look like, and I'm not sure I'm doing something correct.
Yeah, if your hip is turned
Right.
in or
Right.
out, or the shoulders up or down.
And for someone
it
who's
could
never
make all
done
the
yoga,
difference.
it really makes a difference.
Talk to me about, like from one family member to the other, is it totally genetic as far as heredity, or could it be because the lifestyle was established in the home and maybe the absence of certain foods or dietary know-how?
Well, certainly a risk factor, if you remember, let's say your dad quickly losing his stature and becoming very, kyphotic, really rolled forward, to have a first-degree male relative, there's something unique about that genetic.
Even if you're a woman?
Yeah, especially
Really?
if both my parents were heavy smokers, but neither one of them lost their stature. They died in their mid-70s. So they should have, according to the statistics of their lifestyle. So yes, if you again, the same thing. If you remember your mom losing height and becoming that bent over, it's where the vertebrae are now compressing into wedges, just by nature of not being dense enough and have a good enough structural support, that they begin to compress and they cause that folding in upon themselves.
Is there a point that it's too late to make corrective measures, to take corrective measures with yoga and chair yoga, or is there always a way to improve?
There's always a way to improve.
Even at, let's say, 85?
Even at 85, even if someone is already kyphotic, Leslie, thankfully, is an expert in this, and we were taught some of this in the workshop. What things are safe for someone who has already had some osteoporotic fractures. So, yes, it's never too late. I really think movement is youth. As long as we're moving.
So rehab facilities should be doing yoga as part of the rehab. Hospitals should, senior centers should, and not just because people think it's fashionable to do yoga and trendy.
Yeah, and sometimes people will say to me, because of certain religious or spiritual beliefs, they're afraid to do yoga. And I say to them, look, this is not particularly about a spiritual belief or philosophy. It's about breath work and moving our bodies in an awareness that allows you to be more balanced and more physically healthy and strong and flexible.
It's about energy, which is in all things, it's a scientific principle and a medical phenomena.
Yeah, and that if your class with one teacher doesn't work, go to another class with a different teacher. Find someone that is inspiring and fun for you. my favorite teacher may not be someone else's favorite teacher.
And maybe we'll find more and more classes cropping up that are just for yoga and osteoporosis. Because now there's all kinds of yoga. There's gentle yoga. There's
yin yoga. There's restorative yoga. There's like, I think it's Rambo yoga.
Oh yeah, that power yoga.
Oh, these power yogas. It's almost like an oxymoron to me. But no judgment.
If people are doing yoga, that's always a good thing. We have a little bit of time left, and I want to be sure that we don't overlook anything. Now, your contact info will be at the end of the show, so people will be able to get in touch with you should they have more questions. Would you recommend any reading material, or can people do too much with reading and self-diagnostic and not seek help if they need it?
No, I do recommend Dr. Fishman's book, right? Yoga for Osteoporosis by Lauren Fishman. He's a man. And the last thing I'd like to quickly say is that I'm often asked what it takes to be healthy. And I say three things. One is your physical health, to be as active as you can in as many ways as you can be, and to
not
eat,
just yoga.
Not just yoga. To do different things and whatever really moves you, but also, a clean, natural diet as much as possible, low sugar, low alcohol, low processed foods.
How about gluten?
That's a long discussion, but I would say there's more gluten
we
sensitivity
have,
today.
3 minutes left.
Okay.
So go for it.
So I would say that probably 7 out of 10 of my patients, I'm recommending they're doing a gluten-free diet. I think for a lot of people, gluten in their digestive system is not well digested, and therefore it's inflammatory, and it stimulates a lot of inflammatory reactions in the body.
Okay, I don't ever remember my parents or my grandparents eating. I remember them eating white bread and all that, and I don't ever remember an issue with that. Were they unaware, or has something changed about either the farming process or the process of, is it more refined? Why now? Or do we have better ways to determine that it's gluten sensitivity?
Well, there are more sensitive tests for determining that. Okay. The wheat itself is very different. It's not GMO, but it's so highly hybridized that the proteins from wheat are probably very different than the wheat that our parents were eating. Okay. And it's just ubiquitous in our diet. It's not just bread and pasta. It's in everything. A lot of things that we eat. And that's why I say, listen, if you eat a diet that's not in a box, most likely you'll be eating gluten-free. So anybody who has a digestive problem, they're on a gluten-free diet. So, but I do different kind of diet strategies for different people. But for the most part, we all need to be eating more vegetables, more fruit, less processed, less sugar, less alcohol. So the three things. The one is taking care of physical body. The second thing is to have a sense of purpose in life. Whether it is someone's work, whether it's a philosophy to live with compassion and kindness, or whether it's raising a happy, healthy family and nurturing that through lives and generations. I think that's the most important and most difficult job on the planet. So purpose. And the third thing is loving, authentic relationships in our lives. Hopefully, with our family, with our spouses, with our partners, with ourselves, and hopefully with God. So those three things: physical health, take care of our physical selves, live a life with purpose, and healthy, loving, authentic relationships in their lives. And people have that. Most of the time, they're really healthy. Really. Sometimes I see people the way they eat and drink, but they love life so much, and they have such a lovely life. They've got great health.
Yeah, I think it's all about that kind of balance that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Well, I really would love to have you back, so promise you'll come and share some of your knowledge. And your passion for what you do is fantastic. And it's so interesting that we met in a yoga class and just sort of started chatting.
Yeah,
and,
having a little discussion around all this and being fascinated by each other's work. Yeah.
And, I think it was just absolutely perfect. The timing on this. And, we have a minute left. I'm going to ask you, in a nutshell, what do you absolutely want to be sure that our viewers take away from this before I say goodnight?
That any kind of test that a patient has really has to be individualized to their family history, to their personal history, to their lifestyle, and to their mental, emotional, and spiritual being. That tests are just a tool, that they are not describing a person's actual health state. To really get that information in a way that makes sense personally for them.
Fantastic. Very wise words. Thank you. Thanks for joining us on The Sacred Journey. We'll see you next week.